and add Monica in again. Just give me a minute.
Hello there.
Hi, yes, I can finally hear you.
Okay,
Okay.
nice. I'm wearing the earphones.
Okay. So we had a few questions, Monica. Someone had asked, can we develop acne or hypertrichosis without abnormal periods in PCOS?
Yeah, definitely, because we have the criteria where there are 4 findings in PCOS. So one is they can have loss of hair in the female pattern in this portion. They can definitely have acne, and they can have hypertrichosis or increased hair growth, increased hair thickness in the male pattern areas, like in the mustache area, beard, in the side locks, lower belly area, and around the nipple area. So these are the areas where the hair follicles have androgen sensitive receptors. So
Right.
what happens is, hormonally, they could be having regular cycles, but they could have any one or more of the skin and hair findings like acne, thickening of skin on the neck,
Right.
generalized pigmentation of the face and neck. So one or more of any of the 4 skin and hair related findings can be present.
Right. So someone else asked if premature graying is a sign of PCOS.
No, it's not.
Okay.
That is totally a different entity where genetically your melanin production is reduced
Okay.
in few hair strands. So that can be genetic, or sometimes it can be because of the oxidative stress that your body is going through.
Okay. And so these things can usually be combated with the help of diet or medication.
For oxidative stress or for the skin and hair findings in PCOS?
For both.
For both. So let's talk specifically about PCOS, because now we are not discussing graying of hair.
Correct. Correct.
So definitely lifestyle changes and diet modification is the first and foremost thing, because there's no point in putting somebody on medication,
Correct.
because we can't do it for lifetime. We can
Correct.
probably do it as initiation therapy, so 1 or 2 months. So first line medication in dermatology, what we like to use in people who are getting acne or hypertrichosis because of hormonal imbalance is metformin,
Right.
because primarily we want to reduce the insulin surge
Levels.
which is happening.
Yes.
After that, the second line will be if the lady is not planning a pregnancy, so we would like to put them on OC pills, because firstly we need to bring their estradiol and progesterone levels to normal even while we treat the excessive hair. So when we are doing laser hair reduction for the increased hair growth, we also want to have an internal control over the androgen receptors and the circulating hormones.
Right.
So firstly, we put them on medication
So it
along
has to
with
be,
lifestyle modification.
yeah, a holistic approach.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a combined approach of both, because we can't afford just doing laser hair reduction. It is also expensive
Right.
and time consuming, and we can't do a trial and run. We need to hit the spot with all the possibilities that we have.
Right. Right. So someone else asked, I have PCOS and pimple problem. Can you suggest a face wash for acne?
Face wash for acne, yes. There are many face washes. So depending on the price range, if you're looking at something in 200 to 300 rupees, then you stick to Acne Aid foaming face wash, or there is Sebamed foaming face wash. Or if you can afford something around 1500 range, then you can buy an Avene, Avene, or a Bioderma salicylic acid based face wash. Easily available is Neutrogena salicylic acid 2%. That's something which is balanced. Anybody can buy it. It's not too expensive.
Okay. And that is good for treating acne, generally for a face.
For acne, yes.
Yeah.
For acne, yes. But again, in pregnancy, we should not use salicylic acid. So that I'll advise separately later.
Okay. Okay. So I had this other question which I was just talking about. There was a patient who said she's trying to get pregnant now, but she has PCO and she was put on isotretinoin and OCPs to treat her acne. But now, since she's trying to get pregnant, she is off both these medications. So how can she treat her acne now without this medication?
What without isotroin and
OCPs.
OCPs, because she's planning to
Get pregnant. Yes.
So even before pregnancy, metformin is a medication which we put patients on that also helps them in conceiving,
Definitely.
because most people with
So you think
PCOS,
metformin also helps with acne?
yeah, metformin does.
Okay.
Though it's first line medicine,
Okay.
it does. And after conceiving, of course, that will be under the endocrinologist or under your hands,
But
under the
metformin is,
gynecologist's
it
hand.
can still be given in pregnancy. It is quite safe. So
Right.
maybe
So along with that, topical medication from our end,
yeah.
the only thing that's safe in pregnancy which they can use is benzoyl peroxide.
Okay.
We
So
can't
face
even
wash.
use topical retinoids. Yeah,
Okay.
benzoyl peroxide face wash or benzoyl peroxide gels are available.
So would you advise peels in pregnancy?
No, we don't. Of course, there are a few peels that can be done. When
Okay.
we go through literature, we can do lactic acid peel and glycolic acid peel.
Okay.
But we really don't want to touch pregnant women.
Okay.
You know, we don't, because there's not enough research.
Okay. Okay. So someone else has asked, what would you suggest for acne-prone sensitive skin face wash? I think pretty much the same what you said earlier, no? Neutrogena and...
Yeah, if they have sensitive skin, then there's Cetaphil OS cleanser,
Okay.
which also has salicylic acid, but it suits sensitive skins better,
Okay.
who already have combination skin. So few areas are dry and few areas are really greasy, then they have to use Cetaphil OS cleanser.
Okay. So I was just talking when you were away about how, you know, even though you have acne or hirsutism, it has to be like a holistic approach, both with hormonal therapy to correct your hormones, and at the same time they can go in for skin treatment, like, you know, as you said, things like chemical peels or laser treatment. So it has to be
Yeah,
from both ends.
we have to do both. We have, of course, before we start laser hair reduction, we want to give them a month's time, you know, before we start the treatment, because we want everything else to come in control, so we don't end up wasting a laser session
Correct.
for the patients.
Correct.
And
Someone has
we
asked,
try to
as
tell me.
salicylic acid could cause dryness of skin, is there a specific regimen that you recommend for your patients? And
And
also, could
also,
salicylic acid cause photosensitivity?
yeah, anything that we use to treat acne topically, like salicylic acid, retinoids, any of these can cause dryness. Right. And the specific regimen will be, if you have to use salicylic acid, you have to. So then you use a good enough moisturizer, which is also going to counteract the acne face wash. Plus, it should be non-comedogenic.
Okay.
So there are specific creams which are there for combination skin who have dryness and also oiliness, which is causing acne. Avene has a range, Avene.
Okay.
Avene has a whole range of moisturizers for acne prone skin.
Okay.
So you have to use a wash, moisturize your skin, and then use a sunscreen on top of it.
Okay.
And any of your anti-acne preparations should be reserved for the night. Nighttime application is important. We should not use any of these photosensitizing agents in the morning.
All right.
So all your retinoids, all your benzoyl peroxides should be used only at night and washed off in 30 minutes.
Okay.
That will decrease the photosensitivity.
Okay. Is topical retinoid safe to use during pregnancy?
No, it's not.
Okay.
It's not. We also advise them to stop a month ahead, just the way we ask them to stop oral retinoids a month ahead.
Okay.
We also want to stop topical retinoids because for whatever reason, there's going to be systemic absorption.
So someone has asked me, can you tell me a little bit about hydrosalpinx? How can it be treated? Does it lead to infertility? So hydrosalpinx basically means that your fallopian tube is fluid filled, and that means your tube is not free. There's a block in the tube. So basically the tube is what we need to pick up the egg from the ovary and to fertilize with the sperm. So if there's a block in the tube, then yes, it is going to cause some infertility. But if it's just on one side and if your other tube is free, then there shouldn't be an issue. Whenever you're ovulating on the ovary where the tube is free, you should be able to have good chances of conception. I'm just speaking a little bit about this because someone asked me, although we're just discussing PCOS right now.
So I have a question for you, Karunya.
Yeah.
We read a lot about this primrose oil, evening primrose oil. It's a plant extract in treating PCOS. So we tend to see a pattern where patients are really scared to take metformin for some reason. You know, they just feel it's taken only by diabetic individuals.
Yeah.
What's
We
your
see
take
a
on?
lot of patients because we know that metformin is to increase the insulin sensitivity and you know that it's going to help them with ovulation and with weight loss. But I know a lot of patients come back because they go to the pharmacy and the pharmacist, you know, tells these young girls, why are you taking this medication? Because this is prescribed for diabetics. So yes, so you were asking me about the role of evening primrose oil.
Correct.
Okay, so evening primrose oil is more of it's a plant extract, as you said. We tend to prescribe it more for any inflammatory conditions. They say this is good because it's very rich in omega-6 fatty acids. We generally tend to prescribe it for people who have breast pain or myalgia. Mastalgia, or people who are suffering from a lot of PMS, especially during PMS, who have breast pain. Those kind of symptoms we tend to prescribe evening primrose oil. It's generally for any inflammatory conditions. They say this is good. Even for acne, I was reading that it's supposed to be good. So
Yeah, definitely. So off late we have a couple of supplements which are also being prescribed for inflammatory type of acne, where there is pus formation, redness, pain, and burning sensation. It has definitely helped in most of my patients when I add it as an adjuvant medication, and I really admire the way it is kind of helping. Just isotretinoin, and this in addition has clearly showed much more improvement.
definitely, I think so too. And a lot of my patients who suffer with breast pain just before the periods or mood swings, also I found that they have quite a bit of improvement with evening primrose oil taken daily over a period of 1 or 2 or 3 months. They definitely see a lot of improvement, and even their PMS symptoms, I find.
Okay, so I have one more question. How often are you using myoinositol instead of metformin? Do you feel there's any difference in response?
Okay. So, to be honest, I think they kind of have a similar effectiveness, except that I find that metformin for some patients can cause a lot of GI symptoms like, gastritis or loose stools or, abdominal discomfort, which I find is not so much with myoinositol. But it pretty
Okay.
much has the same action, it also helps to improve insulin sensitivity, and it helps to improve ovulation and fertility as well. So I feel that this is one of the drugs that we are really using now to help patients with infertility. Are you using
Okay.
this with skin related issues as well?
Yeah, when somebody refuses to take metformin, then I have to fall back onto myoinositol. But I just realized they act pretty much the same. Maybe a little sensitivity is a little less for myoinositol,
Right,
um, but the price is a lot more different. It's
right,
much more expensive
right.
to put somebody on myoinositol than yeah.
Right, yes.
Okay.
So I was also wanting to ask you about what do you do when people have excessive hair growth on areas like their tummy or their chest when women develop because of PCOS and the excessive male hormone, when they have hair growth on like the tummy, back, and chest? How do you generally? I mean, of course, we also with the hormones, but like
What are
dermaplasia.
the kinds of lasers? Yeah, so for hair reduction, there are two major kind of lasers that are being used in general in all the centers now, both corporate and by individual doctors like us. So the best laser is Nd:YAG.
Okay.
Nd:YAG can be used on a smaller area of skin or on a larger area. So for coarse hair, we try to stick to Nd:YAG, but diode is another laser which can be used for larger body parts, and it is kind of pain-free. You don't have any discomfort when we kind of put somebody on diode laser. You just feel a little warm.
Okay.
And anybody who has a hormonal imbalance, anybody in general will be requiring 8 to 10 sessions of laser. And somebody with hormonal imbalance, it could be +2 most
Okay.
of the time
Yes.
under good hormonal control.
Okay. All right.
I think we have a question
Yeah.
also, Karunya.
Yeah.
Maya Sham Sundar asks, suggest a good vitamin supplement for hair for women 50 plus, as we and so there is a lot of hair loss because they're also using hair color. There is a lot of hair loss. So I think hair color usage will not cause hair loss
Okay.
because that's something which you are going to apply on the hair shaft. And nowadays the hair colors are really good. The formulations are really good. They make sure not to add things which could increase the hair fall.
Right.
So something really good is you can use something called as Careglo Women. It's a capsule. Take it for 2 months. It's a routine hair supplement that we advise. If not that, there is Revilus, Revilus. So these are, Revilus can be used both by men and women. So
Okay.
Caraglo Eva is only for women specifically. Both which ways for 2 months is the course. So
Okay.
in spite of that, if your hair fall is not coming to control, then we have to look at the vitamins. We have to look at the hormones.
Okay.
Okay.
So I think
Then,
there are a couple of more questions. Dr. Monica, please advise on pigmentation of the neck area.
okay, so pigmentation of the neck again is because of insulin resistance,
Right.
what you were talking about. So PCOS, insulin resistance, and acanthosis nigricans is the word what we use for thickening of skin on the neck or darkening of skin on the neck. So the treatments that we do specifically is topical applications, very minimal effect is going to be there with topical applications because this is not true pigmentation. This is because of increased thickness of skin in response to insulin
Insulin.
like growth factors
Correct.
which are present in the skin, the growth factors which are responding to insulin, which is circulating in the blood. So we do medium depth peels. Medium depth peels are something like phenol peel, TCA, trichloroacetic acid peels. So these are the peels which we do along with giving them metformin.
Okay.
So oral medication to control the insulin levels. Along with that, topical peels. We need to do 2 to 3 peels. I don't believe in doing 6 or 8 or so many peels because that also is not good. You're going to bring down the thickness of skin, and ultimately the sensitivity of the skin increases when we do so many peels in a row, right?
Right.
So when we do medium depth peels, we do it once in 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay. So I also find that when we put them on metformin and when they start losing a few kilos, the pigmentation, like naturally starts to reduce and come down. Have you seen this in your experience?
Yeah, definitely. Just with diet
Yes.
regulation and exercise,
Right.
which is 30 to 45 minutes of cardio exercise, not like where your heart rate goes up, that's when you can limit it to 30 minutes.
Right.
Then without using anything, the patient's pigmentation goes away. You might have noticed this in pregnant women also.
Correct.
Most
Yeah.
pregnant women develop this pigmentation on the neck, underarms.
Yes.
Post delivery, they shed a few kilos, then it is automatically
Chances
gone.
get better. You're right. Yes. So I think even with just minimal medication, mainly with the lifestyle modification, a lot of these PCO issues can be combated. I feel.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, definitely. There are a few people in who there is thin lean PCOS, right?
Right.
Do you
People
want
who
to
are not
explain a
obese
little
and
bit?
yeah.
Yeah, do you want to explain a little bit about lean PCOS? Because most girls could still be within their BMI limits and
Right.
still they have these.
Right. Right. So although we say in PCO, and this is a study which says that 50 to 60% of women with PCO are either overweight or obese, but there is still some population of women with PCO who are very much within the BMI who have a normal weight. So again, as I said, how we diagnose them is with the other parameters. So maybe with the scan findings, with these external factors, with their hormonal imbalance, this is how we diagnose. So, these people tend to be a little more resistant to treatment in my experience than the people who are overweight, because when they start losing weight or dropping a few kilos, we see a lot of improvement. So lean PCO, I feel especially tend to have a little more difficulty with getting back to regular ovulation and fertility in my
Yeah.
experience. Yeah.
So they need a little more push from your end in the form of medications,
Right, right. They will need a
apart from
little
the
more
diet.
medication than the other PCO patients. But it is
Okay.
very possible to see a lot of women who are very lean, in fact, and who can have the typical signs and symptoms of PCO.
Yeah. There's one more question, Carmen. I think this is for me. This might be a far shot, but is there a regimen for severe acne for lupus patients? So this is my friend who is a rheumatologist in the US. She's
Okay.
saying use OCPs are contraindicated. Do you think there is an IUD which could help acne? So I think OCPs and IUD, there's going to be systemic
Release of
absorption of,
hormone.
even if it is internally inserted an IUD, that also is going to release some amount of progesterone and estrogen.
Correct.
So I think in these patients, we need to stick with, because it's lupus, even isotretinoin is going to have some effect on the bones.
Okay.
So we'll stick with topical applications in them. We could use an antibiotic come anti-inflammatory medicine. So
Okay.
tetracyclines is what we use in India, that's true. But I think in the US, tetracyclines you don't really use so much.
Right.
So yeah, topical medicines is the first line drug in these lupus patients for acne.
Okay. And what are your thoughts on steroid applications?
Steroid application is one major headache for most, no, all the dermatologists, because we get this has nothing to do with PCOS, but a lot of young girls and a lot of older women also.
Misuse.
Steroid abuse, yeah, there is misuse, abuse. Any random person is using steroid to just look good and pretty. After a month or 2 months of using that, too, these are like the highest potency corticosteroids. So they cause recalcitrant acne, which does not respond to treatment for the first 1 or 2 months or so, and we have a tough time treating it because already the skin is sensitive. We can't do any peel, we can't do a laser toning or a Q-switch laser on them. We can only just wait and observe until their skin gets better naturally.
Okay.
Once we stop the steroid, and then we start, probably the only medicine that we can use is oral antibiotics, because they mostly have gram negative infections,
Okay.
gram
So
negative
absolutely
bacteria.
no steroid use without doctor prescription, right?
For acne, it's not even an option.
Okay.
Topical steroid is not an option at all for acne.
All right. Okay. So I think there's another question: do hormonal medications like OCPs cause hair loss? So I think in my experience, I don't think it causes hair loss. Have you seen with OCPs hair loss?
No,
No.
it must be a hair loss which has started. It's on the go. And once you're on OCP, you need to give it a month for the whole regularization of the hormones to take place.
Right, and
So they
that I think
usually,
helps, right, with hair loss.
yeah, it
OCP to a
helps.
certain
It
extent it
helps.
helps you with your hair loss. Yeah.
So even if we don't put them on any topical minoxidil in patients with this really severe female pattern hair loss, still with just OCPs they improve. The hair loss will cease. So if somebody is experiencing hair loss within a month of starting OCPs, it's something which has started before you've started your OCPs. So it's going to control in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So you just have to be patient.
Right.
Karanya, you have a question. Is endometriosis and PCOS the same?
No, it's not the same at all. PCOS is, as I told you, all of these symptoms, like you have irregular periods, or you don't get periods at all, or you have acne and hirsutism, and on ultrasound, of course, these findings. Endometriosis is a condition where endometrium, which is supposed to be inside the uterus, starts growing outside. Like for instance, in the ovaries, or in a different part of the in your fallopian tubes, things like that. Or for some patients, even in the scar site, like for instance, if they've had a cesarean, even in that site, if some endometrium starts growing, we call that as endometriosis. Endometriosis is usually, they don't have issues with ovulation or regular periods, but they tend to have severe painful periods. They have a lot of dysmenorrhea, and they can even have very heavy flow during periods. And endometriosis is another important cause of infertility. We find that patients with endometriosis find it very difficult to get pregnant. So,
Can they coexist? Can somebody with PCOS end up with endometriosis?
so in my experience, I've not seen too many people who have endometriosis and PCOS at the same time, but it can, I suppose, they can have both the issues together.
Okay.
But in endometriosis, usually they don't have any hormonal imbalance. They basically just have, these endometriotic spots or endometriotic cysts which grow outside the uterus, and this can cause them a lot of pain and heavy bleeding and infertility. I find.
Okay.
Yeah. So, do you feel that physical activity and exercise in itself can help with acne?
There was one patient, specifically, I remember this last year, because most patients don't do everything that we advise,
Right.
The ones who are just, some people don't want to take internal medication, so they just don't take it, but they apply the medicine and they feel that's good enough. But there was this one particular patient, she was just using the topical medicines, but her acne was grade 3. It was quite severe. She had pustules and she had a lot of redness, inflammation. She just had a diet control. So she stopped rice and she shifted to wheat also. I usually advise my patients to stop wheat and processed flour,
Gluten, right?
refined flour, and refined sugars. So gluten is something which I did not study about, but in few weeks or few days back, I've come across so many articles which say that it can stimulate the inflammatory process in our body, be it to the ovaries. Mostly in women, it's mostly the targeted organs are thyroid and ovaries.
Right.
So that lady has just stopped gluten. She has started exercise, and she was just on a topical prep, only one single topical prep.
And she had improvement.
She had zero acne in 2 months. She
Okay.
just had zero acne in 2 months. So that kind of brought my hopes up that, you know, I don't really have to be very aggressive with my treatment. Sometimes just the diet. That too, she had adult onset acne. She already had 2 children. She was in her late 30s.
Okay.
So she responded. So I think definitely it's a
So
big,
that's another
there's a big
question I
scope.
wanted to ask you. Do you feel that, especially when acne develops earlier, like close to puberty or in the teenage, do you feel that in the later years it gets better with age? Is there an age
Uh,
factor there?
Usually the general acne that starts off is in during the puberty or maybe until they are 30 years old,
Okay.
because that's when the sebaceous activity is high, the sebaceous activity is strong. But it should come down because with age the oil production in our skin also decreases.
Okay.
But if it does not, if it continues to happen, not just in women, there is adult onset acne in men also, because the insulin hormone plays a role there.
Correct.
Not the ovaries, but the insulin hormone alone plays a role there. So, yeah, definitely people who start off with acne in their teenage years should control by the time they are 30. If
Okay.
it is not, then there's a hormonal influence which is playing a role, or a genetic predisposition which is contributing to it.
Okay. So I think there's another question. Doctor, I'm seeing changes in skin and hair during this lockdown, increase in acne and hair loss. Is it just stress or lifestyle change related?
Increase in stress. Oh yeah, I think during lockdown everybody ends up they're all staying home, right?
Right.
That is one reason. Your diet, and there is not much exercise
Physical
that's
activity,
happening.
right?
So I'm not very sure because I need more history on this. It could be because of sedentary lifestyle, consumption of a lot of carbohydrates, or some people are actually having acne. The working crowd during the lockdown are having acne because of the mask usage,
Okay, yeah,
because
yeah,
it's
yeah.
kind of occluding. You're continuously in AC, especially healthcare workers and us. We are continuously working in air conditioned rooms, and we are
Right,
having a mask on almost all day. So that's
right.
occluding the duct. So the
Okay.
oil kind of stays inside. That can also cause acne.
Okay. And also, does the sweating, like I sweat so much inside my mask every day, especially in this area, will that also like have a role to play with
Yeah,
causing acne?
because sweat ducts and oil glands are different. Their openings are different. So when there is a lot of sweat, there's also a lot of sebum production.
Okay. So
So
again,
if we are not letting it get
yeah,
out, then you could have acne.
again you can have acne.
And also there is a lot of other problems that happen because of mask, not just acne, because the skin is constantly humid, right? In that area, it's constantly wet.
Right.
So there is maceration of skin. So there is redness, irritation because of constant friction from the masks.
Correct.
So the best thing that you could do is, definitely we can't do anything about sweating, but you have to use a good moisturizer.
Okay.
Good
So,
moisturizer to take care of the rash which is troubling you
okay.
because of mask usage.
Okay. I think there's another question for you. Are there non-invasive treatments for post-acne hyperpigmentation?
Post acne hyperpigmentation, yes. Non-invasive will be topical creams because we're not using
So
lasers here.
basically, asking
Topic
about stars, right?
pigmentation, I think
Okay.
just pigmentation.
Okay.
Scars, of course, we can't do much. Either for pigmentation or scars, topical preparations like
Okay.
glycolic and kojic acid, and azelaic acid. These are the commonly used topical applications in post-acne pigmentation. We can use a retinoid if they also have scarring along with pigmentation. So scarring is different from pigmentation. Scarring is where your skin is dented
Okay.
because of a collagen based problem in the dermis from acne. So there is a dip in your skin. It's not straight. The skin goes bumpy, right? So those are
So
scars.
scarring.
So for scars, usually there is not much of a scope with non-invasive treatments.
Okay.
But marks, pigmentation, definitely we can take care of it with the help of one of these alpha or beta hydroxy acids. It works
Okay.
quite well.
Okay. Please suggest a cream for age spots after menopause.
So I think they are talking about these melasma. This is one thing which we didn't discuss about.
Okay.
So melasma also is hormone dependent. There is some hormonal influence.
Okay.
It develops during pregnancy. If you notice, most pregnant women in their first or second trimester start developing these brownish patches on the cheeks.
Okay.
Most commonly, some people may have it on the nose, on the forehead,
Okay.
or around the
Is
mouth
this the
area
same
also.
like dark circles, or no? That's different.
No, this is the square, this kind of pigmentation where you get rectangle shaped pigmentation on the cheeks.
Okay.
We call it melasma, right?
Okay.
So that is deep pigmentation in the skin. It takes place in the dermis.
Okay.
So that also can happen during menopause.
Okay.
Because there also we have
A drop in
slight
the
imbalance in in the hormones. So how do we take care of it? Melasma by itself is a very large topic, and it's a very resistant pigmentation. Most of the times topical preps don't help much.
Okay.
But of course, using sunscreen is most important because it will avoid further spread. So a higher SPF sunscreen, anything beyond 40 or 50 SPF should be good. Along with that, one of the depigmenting creams, which I advised earlier, can be used. But what works best is Q-Switch Tendiag laser.
Okay.
We've been using this laser for a long time, and depending on the strength of the machine, it can do wonders. Because this is a recalcitrant problem, as in it can keep coming and going away, you need maintenance sessions. So anything 6+2 and further maintenance sessions once in a month will be required.
Okay. Is tretinoin creams good for hyperpigmentation?
Tretinoin primarily we don't give it as first line in scarring.
Okay.
That's what they asked, right? So tretinoin we give it for scarring. For hyperpigmentation, it's not first line.
Okay.
If there is hyperpigmentation with scarring, then we give tretinoin. But of course, tretinoin doesn't suit our skin types, Indian skin type, really well.
Okay. So
We
usually
have a
you
lot
don't
of
prescribe this
irritation.
for hyperpigmentation.
No, we don't.
Okay.
Okay, so
Any other questions?
we spoke about myo-inositol and this.
Why is there such an increase in PCOS these days? Is it our diet or? Yes, it's definitely got to do with diet and lifestyle. As I said, people who have very sedentary lifestyles, who have a desk job, who don't get much of physical activity, whose diet is not nutritious, whose diet has a lot of carbs and, as she said, refined sugar, refined grains. These things and they even sleep and stress can also play a really important role in PCOS. And we find that in today's day and time, a lot of people are really stressed out. So I find that a lot of these factors really play an important role, and this is definitely one of the reasons why we are seeing so much more of PCOS these days.
Yeah, so when there's stress, the hormone that's responsible for stress and improper sleep cycles, because if we have to sleep for 8 hours a day, it does not mean we can sleep at 2 a.m. and wake up at 10 a.m., right?
Correct.
You have to follow a good, regularly same sleep cycle. For example, you want to sleep at 10 p.m. every day, you need to sleep at around that time because that will cause some disturbance in the circadian rhythm in your
Yeah, your
body.
melatonin and your cortisol, and it all gets,
Yeah, so
very
there is
good.
an imbalance in these two key hormones, that is melatonin and cortisol. Cortisol again can directly act on the ovaries
Right, stress.
and cause this PCOS.
Right, absolutely. So you're very true. I mean, you're very right. I think even sleep now, so many studies are showing us that even sleep imbalances and insomnia can cause so many hormonal issues and problems related to periods, and even skin and hair, even hair fall and acne.
Right.
Right.
Do we have? Okay, so what is how we first start looking at PCOS is most of the time the crowd which we get, the patient, most of my patients who end up with acne are also having acanthosis, are also having female pattern hair loss, and there is hypertrichosis. So there was a question earlier before we started the live session. So there was a 35-year-old. She has increased hair growth over the chin area alone. So she says that there is just one or two hair strands which are thicker. The rest of the hair is fine. So she feels it's genetic. And then we ran through, first we tried to do hair reduction without running through the hormones, because it's a big deal to do the entire hormonal profile for
Hormonal
the sake
profile, you're
of,
right. Yes.
it's difficult to convince the patient as well. So then we ended up doing a couple of laser sessions. Then that 1 or 2 strands of hair wouldn't go away. And then she developed a few extra strands of hair here and there on the upper lip area, on the side locks. So then we had to explain how the laser is not responsible for new hair growth, because we did not touch those areas.
Right.
Right. So this was a case, ongoing case of PCOS, but she had very few hair strands which are responding to the circulating DHT levels.
Okay.
And it was important to diagnose. So sometimes I feel that conviction which we have, the patients should also have in understanding why we want to do a certain
Absolutely.
test before we run the lasers on
Yes,
them.
correct. So I find that something I mean, it's very absolutely right what you said. I find that especially when I see, young girls or women with PCO, I find that they want to be treated right away. They don't understand that lifestyle and all of this plays such an important role. They want medication right away. And they say, I've tried all of these things, I'm not losing weight, so you put me on medication now. I need to, get my periods, I need to get better. So it's absolutely, as you said, it's a holistic thing. We have to evaluate so much, and we are going to tell them the right steps of how to go about it. So definitely convincing patients to understand this whole process is a bit of a challenge these days. You're right.
I have a question for you, Karanya, now. One thing is, what are the surgical options in PCOS? And when do you decide that you have to, do a laparoscopic surgery to take care of the cysts in the ovaries? When do you take the call?
So I think usually, as I told you initially, when we diagnose somebody with PCOS, we first start off with, especially if they're overweight and we find there's imbalance in their hormones and insulin. First main thing is with lifestyle modification. So we want them to drop a few kilos and watch their diet and try to regulate it that way. If that's not working, we go to the hormones, the OC pills usually, and most of the time it's corrected with OC pills. So when we go to surgery is when we feel that despite 6 months or 1 year of treatment, it is resistant PCO. They are still not, getting better, or especially if it's someone who's trying to get pregnant and they're having infertility. I think that is when we think about laparoscopy. And I think it's
Also, the size of cyst.
yeah. So usually, most of the time, the cysts don't grow to be too big in PCO, from what I've seen. But what we do is a procedure called ovarian drilling. So or ovarian pottery, it can be called either thing. So we just make small punctures in the ovary, especially when we find that it's very resistant PCO. We find when we look inside through laparoscopy, we find that the ovaries are really thick and fluid filled. So we feel that when we make a few punctures on both ovaries and release some of the fluid, the androgen levels drop significantly, and we find that in the subsequent cycles they really start ovulating well. So, but
That's
again,
nice.
see, this is very controversial because some doctors are not keen to do ovarian drilling because they feel that it can affect the ovarian tissue. It can cause some damage. It's a little bit of a controversial thing, but in my experience, I have found that ovarian drilling does help patients, but we use this as a last line resort. We don't straight away plan to go for laparoscopy or surgical intervention for someone with PCO. Most of the time, it's corrected with lifestyle modification and medication, I feel.
Okay.
Yeah. I think someone had a question, Monica. Maybe we take one last question. Can stress trigger dandruff, and how do you treat dandruff?
Stress is not the first thing that triggers dandruff.
Okay.
I would say if it is regular dandruff, which normal people can have, who do not have some bad inflammation going on. So there are two variants in dandruff.
Okay.
There is seborrhea capitis and there is scalp psoriasis. To broadly distribute it into two categories so people understand it. So seborrhea capitis is nothing but you have dandruff on your scalp because of excessive oil
Right.
secretion from your sebaceous glands, which I think is very common in most of us.
Okay.
So what we need to do firstly is regular washing of scalp. So most of us feel washing scalp will cause hair fall, and we end up washing it once in a week or something like that. So
And
that
that
is not right.
that
Yeah,
itself
you
can
have to
increase the
use,
dandruff, right?
yeah, that itself will increase the oil production, and there is a lot of dirt and oil accumulated in the scalp. So your skin tries to fight it to fight the bacteria and the fungal particles which are present on the skin as a part of our immune system's response, then it starts to bring out redness and scaling. That itself is dandruff. So there are some people who, in spite of washing scalp regularly using an appropriate shampoo, they still have this dandruff problem.
Okay.
Then we have to take care of the microorganisms which are causing it to bring down their load. We have to use medicated shampoos, and in some people we need to use oral medication also.
Okay.
So I'm just discussing about the regular kind of dandruff. Let me not go into the stronger ones like scalp psoriasis now.
Okay. All right. So I think we've answered most of the questions.
Yeah, I think we are almost also, it's almost time, end of the session.
Yeah.
So to all our viewers, do you want to tell them how we met each other and why we came up with this topic if we don't have any more questions?
Yeah. So Monica and I, we studied together in Bangalore. We did our post-graduation around the same time in MS Ramaya in Bangalore. And that's how we became good friends. And, we've been in touch. And although she's in Hyderabad and I'm in Chennai. And she recently did a live session where she spoke a lot about hair and skin issues. And, around that time was when I realized a lot of people also have questions relating to hormones and hormonal imbalance. And so we both thought that, it would be good for us to collaborate and do this together so we can, be able to answer both sides of it.
Very well said. And one more reason is because we also see that in published articles or in our textbooks, there is a very less incidence of PCOS in general population, that is in women, in reproductive age group. What did you say it was earlier?
Actually what I read in studies was about 4 to 12%.
4 to 12, but do you think it's much more than that?
Definitely. I to be honest, in my practice, I think at least 4 out of 10 women that I see have PCO. So
yeah. That's what I think. So most women in reproductive age group who have acne, having this hormonal imbalance. So I think, Karnya, anytime now we may just get cut off because we've completed the 1 hour of our live session.
Okay.
So I feel though I was able to get on the session earlier.
I know. I missed you for the first 10 minutes. But I'm so
yeah, it was very unfortunate, but I hope
answer all of these questions. So
yeah, we made up for all the lost time. I think towards the end we were a little quick. We hope all of you enjoyed. Thank you all of you for being so patient, listening out to us, asking us all these interesting questions.
Right, and I hope we were able to give you information about whatever doubts you had and was understandable for you. And if you want us to, do another session, or if you feel you didn't get all your questions answered, please do let us know. We'll definitely plan one more.
So the common topics for both of us will be STDs, sexually transmitted diseases, which you deal with and we deal with.
Right.
Both infective, and there are other diseases which can happen in the genitalia which are non-infective.
Right.
So we will be soon doing a session on that, and try to send in through DM messages to one of us or to both of us your queries much ahead, because this is a sensitive topic. Sexually transmitted diseases is something which everybody is not going to be openly talking about. So your identity will not be exposed. In case you're not on the live session, you can send a DM message to us in our personal space. We will be taking it up sometime in the next month.
Right.
Okay, so you can get your questions pouring about it. You may have experienced at one or the other point of your life some kind of infection, a urinary tract infection, or some kind of vaginal discharge.
To be honest, off late, especially in the summers, I think I also do see a lot of patients with, vaginal itching and candidiasis. So I think that is also something we can both definitely address together and help.
So in July, we will be doing a session, and we will also be posting this video on our respective handles in Instagram and Facebook. Try and watch them or share it with people who missed this session.
Catch it, and if you have any other questions that you want us to answer, please do comment or write to us.
Yeah,
we'll definitely try.
All right. Take care, Karunya.
Thank
Take
you,
care, all of
Monica.
you.
Thank
It was
you.
really nice. Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye bye.
you. Okay. Bye.